My envious cousin struck me at the courthouse entrance, grabbed my throat and cuffed me. Snarling, disgusting animal, family shame. My father just stood there. 5 minutes later, his jaw dropped when he saw me seated in the judge's chair. Can you imagine being publicly humiliated, slapped across the face by your own cousin, while your father just stands there, silent, watching it all unfold? What if that moment of pure degradation happened right outside a courthouse, just minutes before you were scheduled to walk inside and take the judge's seat for the very first time? My name is Shannon, and that unbelievably twisted day changed everything. Growing up, my home in that small Connecticut town felt like a performance where I could never quite get the part right. Everyone knew my dad, Thomas Walker, as the successful, generous businessman. But behind closed doors, he was a ghost, especially to me. His approval felt like a mirage I chased endlessly. My mom, Elizabeth, was my world. She was the one who saw me, who celebrated my nerdy academic wins, who was always in my corner. But when I was 12, cancer stole her away, and suddenly, that cold house became a mausoleum of unspoken words and a gaping void. With Mom gone, the contrast between how my dad treated me and my cousin Alicia became agonizingly clear. Alicia, 2 years older, lived just blocks away but seemed to have a permanent, cherished spot in my dad's heart that I could never touch. Shannon, why can't you be more like your cousin? That became the constant, soul-crushing soundtrack of my teenage years. She was outgoing, charming, always had a joke to make my dad laugh. I was the quiet one, the bookworm. What he never bothered to see was that while Alicia was charming her way through life, her grades were always just there. Meanwhile, I was acing every class, joining every academic club. My 8th grade science project won the state competition. It even got me a feature in the local paper. My dad, he barely glanced at it. 2 weeks later, Alicia made the junior varsity cheerleading squad, and he took the entire family out to the nicest restaurant in town. That night, he actually told me, "Your cousin knows how to be a team player. That will take her further in life than any science award." Can you believe that? As we got older, Alicia's jealousy curdled into outright cruelty. Cutting remarks, spilling soda all over my study notes the night before a huge exam, even lying to a boy I liked, telling him I'd said awful things about him. And my dad, he never, ever intervened. But the absolute worst, that happened in high school. We had to write an original short story for English class. I poured my heart and soul into mine, a story about a girl finding her voice after losing her mother. Somehow, Alicia got her hands on my draft, copied huge chunks of it, tweaked it just enough to call it her own, and submitted it 2 days before the deadline. When I found out, I was devastated. I confronted her. She just shrugged. What does it matter? You always get good grades anyway. I needed this win. I went to our teacher, presented both stories, and explained everything. Thankfully, given our academic histories, the teacher believed me. Alicia failed the assignment. And that, my friends, unleashed a storm. My aunt called my dad, furious that I had humiliated her daughter. My dad, instead of defending me, grounded me. "Family comes first, Shannon," he lectured. "You could have just written another story." That night, I cried myself to sleep, feeling utterly, completely alone. The next morning, still reeling, I found myself in Mrs. Taylor's career counselor's office. She saw my red eyes and just listened. For an hour I talked, and for the first time, I admitted it out loud. I want to be a lawyer. I want to fight for what's right. I want to be in a place where the truth matters. Mrs. Taylor connected me with a local attorney, Janet Reeves, who became my first true mentor. She showed me what was possible and, crucially, that I didn't need my father's approval to chase my dreams. When I tried to tell my dad about my pre-law plans for college, he shot it down instantly. "Lawyers are a dime a dozen, Shannon. That's unrealistic dreaming. You should focus on something practical, like business administration. You could work for me someday." His words stung, deeply, but they also forged something stronger inside me. I applied to colleges with top pre-law programs, secured scholarships, and prepared to leave home behind. College was a strange mix of liberating and terrifying. Liberating because I was finally free from my dad's disapproving glances and Alicia's constant undermining. Terrifying because I was financially on my own. While most of my classmates got parental support, I worked 3 part-time jobs just to get by. Library assistant, waitress, tutor. Sleep was a luxury, but I was determined to succeed without ever asking him for help. I maintained a 3.9 GPA and landed an internship at the district attorney's office during my junior year. I called home, excited to share the news. "That's nice, Shannon," he said, distracted. "Did you hear Alicia got promoted at the mall? She's an assistant manager now." Every single conversation was the same. My achievements minimized, Alicia's ordinary life development celebrated. Slowly, I stopped calling home. He rarely called me. Meanwhile, Alicia had dropped out of community college after 1 semester, claiming it wasn't for her. But that didn't hurt her standing with my dad or aunt one bit. They still praised her street smarts and people skills, showering her with emotional and financial support. He co-signed her car loan. When my winter boots got holes in them, he told me to budget better. That painful contrast pushed me to build my own support network. I found friends who shared my ambitions, my values. And then there was Julia. We met senior year, debate partners in a constitutional law seminar. She was brilliant, hilarious, fiercely loyal. She became the sister I never had. Julia was the first person I told when I got accepted into 3 law schools with a substantial scholarship. She celebrated with me, buying champagne she couldn't afford. When I called my father with the news, he sounded annoyed. "Law school? That's at least 3 more years of not earning a real income." "Shannon, are you sure about this?" During law school, I'd send letters home, sharing stories from my classes. Most went unanswered. The few replies I got were short, impersonal, often filled with updates about Alicia that I hadn't asked for. By winter break of my second year, I decided to go home for Christmas, clutching to a desperate hope that time and distance might have healed some of those old wounds. "Don't expect too much," Julia warned me. "People don't change overnight." She was right. The holiday gathering at my aunt's house was a disaster. Alicia, now a salon receptionist, dominated the room with exaggerated stories about celebrity clients. When relatives asked about my studies, she'd immediately cut in with some dramatic tale about a customer who'd supposedly left her a $100 tip. Later that evening, I overheard her in the kitchen, talking to our cousin William. "Shannon thinks she's so special with her fancy law school," she sneered. "But did you know she had to take out massive loans? She'll be in debt forever. Plus, I heard she's barely passing her classes." Neither of those things was true. My scholarship covered most of my tuition, and I was in the top 10% of my class. I confronted her. She just laughed it off as a joke. But the damage was done. William looked at me differently for the rest of the night. The final straw came when my dad pulled me aside before I left. "Alicia mentioned you've been struggling in school," he said, his voice flat. "You know, there's no shame in coming home and taking a more practical path." I was stunned. "Dad, I'm not struggling. I'm excelling. Why would you believe her over even asking me?" He just shrugged. "Alicia's always been straightforward. You tend to exaggerate your accomplishments." I left that night, checked into a hotel, and the next morning, drove back to campus 2 days earlier than planned. On that long, silent drive, I made a decision. I would create distance. I would build my own path, far away from the people who couldn't celebrate my success. My final year of law school, I immersed myself in my future. Law review, moot court, a prestigious clerkship after graduation. When professors and colleagues started seeing my potential, I didn't call home. The chasm between my family and me was too vast for phone calls to bridge. Julia was there, cheering loudly as I graduated with honors. My father and Alicia, noticeably absent, despite receiving invitations. That night, celebrating with Julia and my new friends, I realized I had created a new family, one built on mutual respect and genuine support. Julia whispered, "They're missing out, not you. We're your family now." She was right, of course, but you know how it is. A small part of you, deep down, still craves that parental approval. My early career as a public defender was grueling but deeply fulfilling. Long hours, modest pay, immense emotional toll. But for the first time, I felt exactly where I needed to be, fighting for those who couldn't fight for themselves. I quickly built a reputation for thoroughness and ethics. Judges noticed. Prosecutors respected my arguments. Senior attorneys started giving me more complex cases. One of those cases brought me to Judge Eleanor Thompson's courtroom. She was formidable, sharp, with zero patience for unprepared lawyers. After I successfully argued a difficult motion, she asked me to stay. "You have potential, counselor," she said, peering over her glasses. "Ever considered aiming for the bench?" "The bench? Me a judge?" "Yes, that is generally what the bench refers to in legal circles," she replied dryly. "This county needs more judges who understand what it's like to represent the disadvantaged." That conversation lit a spark. Judge Thompson became another incredible mentor, guiding me, helping me raise my profile. One high-profile case, where I exposed an employer who'd framed my client, even made local headlines. News of my professional successes eventually trickled back to my hometown. I heard from an old teacher that Alicia had grown increasingly resentful. While I was building a career, she was cycling through jobs, never staying anywhere for long. After 5 years of minimal contact, I decided to try reconnecting with my father. Time, I thought, might have softened things. I called and suggested dinner during an upcoming legal conference in Connecticut. The restaurant was upscale, the conversation painfully awkward. He looked older, tired. We exchanged stilted pleasantries before. Inevitably, he brought up Alicia. "Your cousin has been going through a rough patch," he sighed, swirling his scotch. "Lost another job last month. Not her fault, of course. The manager just had it out for her." I just nodded. I'd heard variations of this excuse my entire life. "That's unfortunate. What are her plans now?" He sighed again. "She's had some legal troubles, too. Nothing serious. A couple of DUIs, a misunderstanding about some merchandise at her last retail job." Translation: Alicia had been caught stealing from her employer. The familiar pattern of excuses and minimization was exactly as I remembered it. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said carefully. "If she needs legal advice, I could recommend some good attorneys in the area." My father's expression hardened. "We don't need your charity, Shannon. Alicia will figure things out. She always does." The dinner ended shortly after. It was clear. Some relationships simply couldn't be repaired. We were strangers, bound only by DNA and a painful history. A year later, I was shortlisted for a judicial appointment. At 30, I would be among the youngest in the state. The vetting process was intense. 2 weeks before the final decision, an anonymous complaint landed on the committee's desk, questioning my character, alleging unethical behavior, manipulating evidence. It was full of suspiciously detailed personal information. I had little doubt about the source. The timing, the details, the blatant attempt to derail my career, it all pointed to Alicia. But my record spoke for itself. Colleagues, even former opponents, vouched for my integrity. Judge Thompson wrote a powerful letter of support. The committee investigated, found the claims baseless, and I was appointed to the bench. Shaken, yes, but more determined than ever. The official announcement came on a crisp autumn morning. At 31, I became the youngest judge in our county's history. The local paper ran a front-page story. Judge Thompson was the first to congratulate me, giving me a fountain pen engraved with my initials. "This was given to me when I took the bench 30 years ago," she said. "Now it's yours. Use it to sign orders that uphold justice." The courthouse staff held a small celebration. Colleagues, prosecutors, public defenders, they were all there. The chief judge welcomed me to the family. Family. The word hit me with a bittersweet pang. This should have been a moment of shared pride with the people who had known me longest. Instead, they were absent. Julia, who had driven 3 hours to surprise me, noticed my melancholy. "They're missing out, not you," she whispered, squeezing my hand. "We're your family now." She was right. Still, that tiny part of me yearned for my father's approval. 2 days later, my phone rang. A Connecticut area code. I knew it instantly. My father. After nearly a year of silence. For a fleeting moment, I thought, maybe he saw the news. Maybe he's finally calling to acknowledge my success. "Shannon, we need to talk," he said, without preamble. His voice was strained, desperate. "Is everything okay, Dad? Are you ill?" Concern immediately overrode our complicated history. "No, nothing like that. It's Alicia. She's in trouble. Serious trouble this time." Of course. He wasn't calling about me. He was calling because Alicia needed something. What kind of trouble? I asked, my voice cooling several degrees. Legal trouble. Fraud charges, identity theft. They're saying she could face serious time. She needs a good lawyer, Shannon. Someone who knows the system. The irony was almost too much. After years of dismissing my legal career as impractical, he now wanted to leverage it for Alicia's benefit. Dad, I'm a judge now. I can't represent Alicia or recommend specific attorneys. It would be an ethical violation. A silence stretched between us, then a bitter laugh. A judge? Since when? That question confirmed it. He hadn't even bothered to search my name, hadn't seen any of the news. Since last week, I replied evenly. It was in the news. Another long pause. Well, congratulations, he said, hollowly, curtly. But that doesn't help Alicia's situation. Surely you can make some calls, pull some strings. That's not how this works. I have ethical obligations now that limit what I can do for family members. The most I can suggest is that Alicia contact the public defender's office if she can't afford private counsel. So that's it? You're abandoning your family when we need you? After everything we've done for you? The accusation was so outrageous I almost laughed. What exactly had they done for me besides undermine and dismiss me at every turn? I'm sorry you see it that way, Dad. I truly am. But I can't compromise my professional ethics, even for family. He hung up without saying goodbye. Later that evening, my phone rang again. It was Lisa Goldstein, a prosecutor I'd faced in court many times. We had a respectful, professional relationship. Her call, after hours, was unusual. Shannon, I'm sorry to bother you at home, but I thought you should know. We filed charges today against an Alicia Walker for fraud and identity theft. Given your last name, I wondered if there might be a relation. My blood ran cold. She's my cousin, I admitted, but I haven't had much contact with her in years. I see. Well, this is awkward, but part of the case involves her apparently using someone else's personal information to open credit accounts. The victim's name is Shannon Walker. She used my identity. It appears so. The accounts were opened several years ago using an old address of yours from college. The fraud was only discovered recently when the credit card companies began collection actions. The pieces clicked into place. Years ago, I'd gotten strange calls from debt collectors about accounts I never opened, dismissed them as scams. Now I understood. Her arraignment is scheduled for next Tuesday in county court. Given the personal connection, I wanted to give you a heads up so you can make sure you're not assigned to the case. Thank you, Lisa. I appreciate the courtesy. After hanging up, I sat in stunned silence. Alicia hadn't just tried to sabotage my career with false accusations. She had actually stolen my identity years earlier. The depth of her resentment, her calculated malice, was even greater than I'd ever imagined. I was faced with a difficult decision. As a family member of the victim, I should attend the arraignment to make a statement. As a newly appointed judge, I needed professional distance. And as someone who had spent years trying to break free from toxic dynamics, I questioned if I should involve myself at all. After a sleepless night, I decided to attend. Not as a judge, but as a family member. Despite everything, she was my cousin. And maybe, just maybe, seeing her face consequences would be the first step toward her taking responsibility. I also hoped that being present might, somehow, open a door to reconciliation with my father, who would surely be there to support Alicia. Little did I know, my decision would lead to one of the most humiliating and ultimately transformative moments of my life. Tuesday morning arrived, strangely beautiful, with crisp air and golden sunshine. I stood in front of my closet, deliberating. I wasn't appearing as a judge, but I wasn't exactly a regular civilian either. I settled on a conservative navy dress and a tailored jacket. Professional, but not overtly judicial. The drive to the courthouse was familiar, but the churning in my stomach was not. I'd faced countless difficult situations in that building, tense negotiations, emotional witnesses, hostile opposing counsel, but nothing prepared me for seeing my father and Alicia under these circumstances. I arrived early, partly from habit, partly to compose myself. As I pulled into the judicial parking area, a security officer approached. "Good morning, Judge Walker," he said with a respectful nod. I thought you weren't on the docket today. I'm not here in an official capacity, Marcus. Personal matter. His eyes widened slightly. Understood, Your Honor. Will you be entering through the judicial entrance? I shook my head. No, I'll use the main entrance today. Thank you. Walking around to the public side, I spotted my father near the steps, checking his watch impatiently. He looked older than his 58 years, shoulders slightly stooped, hair completely gray. For a moment, watching him unobserved, I felt a pang of something like pity. He looked up and saw me approaching. His expression cycled rapidly through surprise, confusion, then weariness. Shannon, what are you doing here? Hello, Dad, I said, stopping a few feet away. I'm here for Alicia's arraignment. His eyes narrowed. Why? To gloat? To make sure they throw the book at her? The accusation stung, but I kept my voice level. Despite everything, she's family, and I thought you might need support too. He seemed taken aback, unable to reconcile my presence with his perception of me as someone who had abandoned family obligations. Before he could respond, a car pulled up sharply to the curb. Alicia emerged from the passenger side, my Aunt Patricia from the driver's. Alicia looked terrible. Her normally perfect hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, dark roots showing. Her face was puffy, eyes bloodshot. She wore a black pantsuit that hung loosely, suggesting recent weight loss. For a fleeting second, I felt genuine sympathy. That feeling evaporated the instant she spotted me. What the hell is she doing here? Alicia demanded, stalking toward us. Her voice was loud enough to attract attention. Alicia, calm down, my aunt hissed, hurrying after her. We're at a courthouse. I don't care. She has no right to be here. Alicia stopped directly in front of me, close enough I could smell the coffee on her breath. Come to watch the show, Shannon. Enjoying seeing me at my lowest. That's not why I'm here, I said quietly. I came to support Dad and to see if there's any way I can help. Help! Alicia laughed, a harsh, brittle sound. That's rich. You're the reason I'm in this mess. My father stepped between us. Alicia, this isn't the place. Let's go inside. No. Alicia pushed past him. She needs to hear this. You think you're so perfect, don't you, Shannon? Little Miss Perfect with her perfect grades and her perfect job and her perfect life. You've always had everything handed to you. The sheer absurdity of her statement left me momentarily speechless. Everything handed to me? I had worked multiple jobs to put myself through school, while she had dropped out of community college and still received my father's financial support. Alicia, I know you're upset, but that's not true. I've worked hard for everything I've achieved. Worked hard. Her voice rose to a near shriek. You sabotaged me. You told the DA about those accounts, didn't you? You've been waiting for a chance to ruin me. I didn't know about the fraud until last week, I said, struggling to maintain my composure. I had no idea you had used my identity. This admission seemed to push her over the edge. Liar, she screamed. Then, before anyone could react, she slapped me. Hard. Across the face. The blow was shocking, more than painful. The sound cracked through the morning air like a gunshot. People around us froze. My cheek burned, and I tasted blood where my teeth had cut the inside of my mouth. Before I could recover, Alicia grabbed the collar of my jacket with both hands, momentarily choking me as she pulled me closer to her contorted face. You filthy animal, she spat, her voice low and venomous now. You're a disgrace to this family. You think that robe makes you better than us. You're nothing. 2 courthouse security officers were running toward us now. My father stood frozen, watching the scene unfold without making any move to intervene. My aunt was pulling ineffectually at Alicia's arm, pleading with her to stop. The officers separated us, one gently moving me back while the other restrained Alicia. Is everyone all right? The first officer asked, looking at me with concern. I recognized him as Officer Ramirez, who regularly worked in my courtroom. I'm fine, I said, straightening my jacket with shaking hands. Judge Walker, do you want to press charges? He asked quietly. Alicia's eyes widened at the word judge, and she looked at me with new understanding and horror. No charges, I said firmly, but the words felt like grit in my throat. But I would appreciate an escort inside. Officer Ramirez nodded and began leading me up the steps. As we walked away, I heard Alicia burst into tears behind me. My father still hadn't said a word in my defense. Inside, Officer Ramirez directed me to a small conference room. "Take a minute to compose yourself, Judge. Can I get you some water or coffee?" "Water would be great." "Thank you." When he left, I finally allowed myself to feel the full impact. My hands trembled as I touched my stinging cheek. Tears welled in my eyes, not from physical pain, but from the public humiliation and the devastating confirmation that my father would always choose Alicia over me, even when she was so clearly in the wrong. I had harbored a small, foolish hope that attending today might lead to some form of reconciliation. Instead, it had only reinforced what I had known for years but refused to fully accept. There was no relationship to salvage. In the quiet of that room, surrounded by the trappings of the legal system I had dedicated my life to, I finally let go of the fantasy that my family would ever see me clearly or value me appropriately. The realization was both devastating and strangely liberating. I don't know how long I sat there. The shock had left me disoriented, the venom in Alicia's voice, my father's silent complicity. A gentle knock interrupted my thoughts. Lisa Goldstein, the prosecutor, poked her head in. "Shannon, are you okay?" I heard there was an incident outside. I managed a weak smile. News travels fast. She sat down, concerned. "Security reported what happened. Are you sure you don't want to file charges?" "I'm sure. It would only escalate the situation." Lisa nodded, then checked her watch, frowning. "Have you seen Kevin Morgan around? He's supposed to be handling arraignments in courtroom C today." "No, I haven't seen him." "Is there a problem?" She sighed. "Judge Reeves was rushed to the hospital this morning. Emergency gallbladder surgery. Kevin was supposed to cover her docket, but he's not answering his phone." A cold feeling settled in my stomach. "Alicia's arraignment is in courtroom C," I said, barely a whisper. "Yes, among about 20 other cases." Lisa ran a hand through her hair in frustration. "We're trying to find another judge, but everyone's booked solid today." Just then, Court Clerk Barbara Lewis appeared at the door, slightly breathless. "There you are, Lisa. We have a situation." She stopped abruptly when she saw me. "Oh, Judge Walker. Thank goodness. We need your help." "My help?" "Judge Reeves is out for emergency surgery. Judge Morgan is unreachable, and we have a full arraignment docket starting." She checked her watch. "In 15 minutes. You're the only judge in the building who isn't currently in court." "Barbara," I said carefully, my voice steady despite the chaos swirling inside. "My cousin is on that docket. She's being arraigned for identity theft, using my identity." Barbara's eyes widened. "Oh dear. That is a complication." Lisa interjected. "We could delay the whole docket, but that means 20 people either wait all day or have to come back tomorrow. Some are in custody." I thought quickly. Let me call Chief Judge Hernandez. This requires his guidance. He picked up on the second ring. I explained everything as concisely as possible, the confrontation outside, my obvious conflict of interest. "I see the dilemma," he said after a moment. "Here's what we'll do. You can open court and handle the administrative aspects. Explain that you have a conflict with one specific case and recuse yourself for that matter only. I'll send Judge Patel from my chambers to handle your cousin's arraignment specifically. He was working on opinions today, but he can step in for one case." "Thank you, sir. That seems like the best solution. One more thing, Shannon," he added before hanging up. "Document everything about the incident outside. If your cousin made physical contact with you on courthouse grounds, that's a serious matter, regardless of your familial relationship." "Yes, sir." Barbara was waiting anxiously when I hung up. "Judge Hernandez says I should proceed with opening court and handle all cases except Alicia's. Judge Patel will come down for that arraignment." Relief washed over her face. "Perfect. Thank you, Judge Walker. I'll have your robes brought to the judicial chambers behind courtroom C immediately." 20 minutes later, I was adjusting my robes in the small chamber behind the courtroom. My cheek still showed a faint red mark, but it wasn't immediately noticeable. I had pulled my hair back into a tight bun and put on the judicial face I had practiced. Calm, impartial, dignified. When I entered the courtroom through the judge's entrance, the bailiff called out, "All rise. Court is now in session." The Honorable Judge Shannon Walker presiding. As I took my seat at the bench, I scanned the crowded courtroom. My heart nearly stopped when I spotted my father and Alicia in the gallery. Alicia's mouth fell open in shock. My father's face drained of color as he realized who was sitting in the judge's seat. I forced myself to look away from them, to focus on the task at hand. Good morning, everyone. We have a full docket today, and I appreciate your patience. Before we begin, I need to make a brief statement. There is one case on today's docket where I have a personal conflict of interest and will be recusing myself. When we reach the matter of State versus Alicia Walker, Judge Patel will temporarily take the bench to handle that arraignment. For all other matters, we will proceed as normal. The court clerk handed me the docket, and I began calling cases. I handled each arraignment with careful attention, explaining charges, confirming rights, addressing bail setting dates. All the while, I was acutely aware of my father and Alicia watching me from the gallery. With each case, handled competently and professionally, I could feel the weight of their gaze. For the first time, they were seeing me in my element, respected, authoritative, confident. After nearly an hour, we reached Alicia's case. The court calls State versus Alicia Walker, case number 2024 CR 789. As previously stated, I am recusing myself from this matter due to a personal conflict. We will take a brief recess while Judge Patel assumes the bench. I stood and exited through the judge's door, passing Judge Patel in the hallway. Thank you for stepping in, Your Honor. He nodded. No problem, Shannon. Family cases are always complicated. I waited in my chambers while Judge Patel handled Alicia's arraignment. Through the door, I could hear muffled sounds. I resisted the urge to peek. Whatever happened now, it was out of my hands. 20 minutes later, a knock. Judge Patel entered, already removing his robe. All done, he said. She pleaded not guilty, but her attorney indicated they'll likely be working on a plea agreement. Given the evidence, that's probably wise. Thank you again for stepping in. He hesitated at the door. By the way, your father asked me where he could find you. I didn't give him any information, but I thought you should know he was asking. My heart skipped a beat. Thank you for the heads up. After Judge Patel left, I returned to the courtroom to finish the remaining cases. Alicia was gone, presumably taken back into custody or released on bail, but my father still sat in the gallery, watching me intently. For the next hour, I focused entirely on the cases, giving each defendant my full attention. With the final case concluded, I adjourned court and retreated to my chambers. I was hanging up my robe when a knock came at the door. Yes, I called, expecting Barbara or another staff member. The door opened slowly, and my father stood there, looking uncertain and somehow smaller than I remembered. May I come in? He asked, his voice lacking its usual confidence. I nodded, motioning to the chair across from my desk. For a long moment, we sat in silence. The roles of our relationship had suddenly, dramatically reversed. In this room, I was the authority figure. He was the visitor seeking audience. My father cleared his throat. So a judge? Yes. You never told me. I raised an eyebrow. I tried to, Dad. Many times, over many years. You were always more interested in Alicia's latest job at the mall. He flinched at the accuracy of the statement. I saw you today in court. You were impressive. Coming from him, it was perhaps the closest thing to praise I had ever received. I didn't know how to respond, so I simply said, Thank you. Alicia was released on bail, he continued. Her lawyer seems to think she'll get a plea deal. Probation, restitution, community service. That sounds appropriate for a first offense, I said neutrally. Another long silence stretched between us. Finally, he said what he had clearly come to say. I'm sorry about what happened outside. She shouldn't have done that. No, she shouldn't have. And I should have stopped her, or said something. I looked directly at him. Yes, you should have. He held my gaze for a moment, then looked away. I've made a lot of mistakes, Shannon. With you. I see that now. It was an admission I had waited decades to hear, but it felt hollow. Coming only after he had seen me in a position of power. Had I remained a public defender, would this realization ever have come? Why did you always favor her over me? I asked the question that had haunted me since childhood, finally finding voice. My father sighed heavily. She reminded me of myself. Struggling, making mistakes, needing second chances. You were always so capable, So self-sufficient, like your mother. His voice caught on the last word. After Elizabeth died, looking at you was painful. You have her eyes, her determination. So you punish me for reminding you of Mom, and rewarded Alicia for being a mess. He winced. When you put it that way, it sounds terrible. It was terrible, Dad. It was terrible to grow up feeling like I was doing something wrong by doing everything right. The conversation in my chambers that day didn't magically repair 20 years of damage. There was no tearful embrace, no instant reconciliation. But it was a beginning. The first truly honest exchange we'd had since my mother died. I don't expect you to forgive me, he said as he prepared to leave. But I am proud of what you've accomplished, Shannon. Even if I've been terrible at showing it. Thank you for saying that, I replied. It means something to hear it even now. We agreed to meet for dinner the following month, a small step toward whatever our relationship might become. As he reached the door, he turned back. Your mother would have been so proud of you. She always said you would do remarkable things. After he left, I sat alone in my chambers, letting the tears fall freely for the first time that day. They were complicated tears. Grief for the relationship I had never truly had with my father, relief at the small breakthrough, and a bittersweet pride in how far I had come, despite everything. The weeks that followed brought significant developments. Alicia accepted a plea deal, full restitution for the money she'd fraudulently obtained using my identity, 2 years of probation, and community service. The prosecutor told me that during negotiations, Alicia had expressed genuine remorse, particularly about the courthouse incident. She asked if you would be willing to meet with her, Lisa told me over coffee. I considered it. Not yet, I said. Maybe someday, but I'm not ready for that. My decision to maintain boundaries with Alicia was part of a larger commitment to my own well-being. For too long, I had allowed the desperate hope of family approval to influence my emotions and choices. Now, I was prioritizing my own healing. I started seeing a therapist, Dr. Rachel Martinez, who specialized in family trauma. Our weekly sessions helped me process not just the recent dramatic events, but the long-standing patterns that had shaped my life. You've been seeking validation from people who were fundamentally incapable of giving it, she observed during one session. That's not a reflection on your worth, but on their limitations. My support network proved invaluable. Julia visited frequently, bringing home-cooked meals and providing that unconditional friendship that had sustained me for years. My colleagues on the bench checked in regularly, offering professional guidance and personal support. Judge Thompson, my original mentor, took me to lunch shortly after news of a courthouse incident circulated. I heard you handled yourself with remarkable dignity, she said. Not everyone could maintain judicial composure after being assaulted by a family member. I didn't feel very dignified in the moment, I admitted. That's the secret of the robe, she said with a knowing smile. It's not about how you feel. It's about how you conduct yourself despite how you feel. 6 months after the courthouse confrontation, I met my father for dinner. These monthly meetings had become a tentative new tradition, each one slightly less awkward than the last. Alicia has been doing well in her therapy, he mentioned as we waited for dessert. She's holding down a job at the library, staying sober. That's good to hear, I said sincerely. While I wasn't ready to reconnect with Alicia, I didn't wish her ill. How are things with you? I asked. Better. He hesitated, then added, I've been seeing someone. A grief counselor. Should have done it 20 years ago after your mother died. This surprised me. My father had always dismissed therapy as paying strangers to listen to your problems. What changed your mind? I asked. You, he said simply. Seeing you that day in court, you were so composed, so strong, even after everything that happened. It made me realize how much I've missed by holding on to the past. It wasn't a perfect relationship, too much water under the bridge for that. But it was honest, in a way it had never been before. On the anniversary of my mother's death, I made a pilgrimage to her grave for the first time in years. I brought yellow roses, her favorite, and spent an hour just sitting beside her headstone, telling her about my life, my achievements, my struggles. I wish you could have seen me take the bench, Mom, I whispered, tracing the letters of her name with my finger. But I felt you there somehow. One unexpected outcome of my personal journey was a new professional initiative. I started a mentoring program for young women from difficult family backgrounds interested in legal careers. Once a month, I invited high school and college students to the courthouse for workshops on law, professional development, and resilience. The law saved me, I told them during our first session. It gave me structure when my life lacked it, and purpose when I felt lost. And ultimately, a way to create justice when I had experienced injustice. Watching these young women find their voices and strengths became one of the most rewarding aspects of my life. Many of them came from situations far more challenging than mine had been. Yet, they showed remarkable determination and courage. "You're creating a legacy," Julia observed after sitting in on one of the workshops, "something that will outlast any family drama." She was right. While I couldn't change my past, I could shape my future and potentially influence the futures of others. The cycle of dysfunction that had defined my family for generations had stopped with me. As I approach my 33rd birthday, I can look back on the past 2 years with a sense of hard-won peace. The young woman who once desperately sought her father's approval has been replaced by someone who understands that true validation comes from within. I recently added a single-family photo to my office. Not the staged portraits my father preferred, but a candid shot of my mother and me at the beach when I was about 9. We're both laughing, our hair wild from the wind. Genuine joy captured in a fleeting moment. It reminds me daily of where I came from and how far I've traveled. The journey of healing is rarely linear. There are still days when old wounds feel fresh, when a casual comment or memory triggers the pain of rejection. But those moments no longer define me or dictate my responses. I've learned that forgiveness isn't about excusing harmful behavior. It's about freeing yourself from the burden of resentment. My cousin's attack at the courthouse door could have been just another painful chapter in our troubled family story. Instead, it became a turning point that ultimately led to greater understanding and peace. When she called me a filthy animal and my father stood by watching, I thought it was my lowest moment. I couldn't have imagined that minutes later, sitting in the judge's seat, I would begin the process of reclaiming my narrative and redefining my worth. We don't get to choose our families or the wounds they inflict. But we do get to choose how we respond to those wounds, whether we let them define us or use them as catalysts for growth. In taking the judge's seat that day, I wasn't just fulfilling a professional role. I was taking the seat of judgment in my own life, deciding what would hold weight and what would be dismissed. Have you ever had a moment when someone's attempt to humiliate you unexpectedly revealed your own strength? Tell me what you think in the comments below. I really want to know.